Hi, and welcome to the Bruce channel. I am Bruce, and it's been a very busy week. As a result, we'll hit several items today, but overall, the show will be a little shorter than it sometimes is. Why the busy? Mostly it was a week of auditions, and one of them in particular had a lot of moving parts, lots of characters, and even required a little bit of songwriting. But it got done, and now it's on to wait, hope, we'll see. An amazing landmark this week. Here in North Carolina's Piedmont Triad, and if you're not familiar with North Carolina, there are some very different communities. Wilmington on the East Coast is the biggest of the beach communities. You may have heard of the Research Triangle, that's Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill, its claim to fame. Each of those cities anchors a big university. North Carolina State is in Raleigh. The University of North Carolina's main campus is at Chapel Hill. That's where the current NCAA men's basketball champ Tar Heels are, and Durham is home to both the East and the West campuses of Duke University. Trivia. I once learned, may still be true, those three cities, the Research Triangle, may still have, the highest concentration per capita of PhDs in the entire country. Charlotte's the big city, of course. It has NBA, it has NFL. Asheville up in the mountains is where the Biltmore Estate is. Fayetteville's economic engine is Fort Bragg, home of the 82nd Airborne. Where I am, I think we're trying to get some of the Research Triangle flavors, so Greensboro, High Point, and Winston-Salem comprise the Piedmont Triad, sometimes just called the Triad. The Triad's official weather station, like most places, is at the airport, Piedmont Triad International Airport. This week it finally happened. Not until Wednesday, July 5th, which you may recall was also Bikini Day, but not until Wednesday, July 5th did the high temperature for the day, as measured officially at the airport, hit 90 degrees. That is, it hit 90 degrees for the first time in 2017. That's crazy late. In all of the weather records here, it's the second latest ever for the first 90 degree. The third latest was June 27th, a full week earlier. The fourth latest is something like June 10th, so July 5th, pretty crazy late. The latest ever, though, even 2 weeks later, July 18th, so we missed. Previously, I've mentioned that this is the first year, not the first year, but one of the only years, unlike most I've experienced since being here, there's no drought. Nowhere in North Carolina is there drought. And that's one of the reasons the temperatures haven't gotten as high. Water takes longer to attain temperature. My friends in Cleveland know that. In summer, it's always a bit cooler near the lake, and baseball opening day often requires a warm jacket. Same for water vapor. Humid air takes longer to warm. So we did hit 90 both Wednesday and Thursday, but only got to 89 on Friday. And no one's complaining. Okay, a couple of weeks ago, I told you the story of the DAs in a couple of North Carolina northern counties and how reports were that they each hired the other's wife to a well-paying full-time job that the wives rarely showed up for. Well, as this headline shows, they were actually indicted and arraigned at a Wake County courthouse. That's where Raleigh is, the state capital. That was in late June, but what surprised most observers, each was charged with a single count of failure to discharge the duties of their office. That's it. It's a misdemeanor. The punishment would be they'd forfeit their jobs, which is a moot point inasmuch as they both resigned a long time ago. The Wake County prosecutor said she hopes to get the money returned, something like $100,000 for the two. Oh, and the former DAs, Craig Blitzer and Wallace Bradsher, they might face discipline from the State Bar Association. Suspension, maybe disbarment. It's not a story you would expect, but a story that might make a screenplay. I'll have to think about that. Oh, and speaking of screenplays and auditions and film like that, I have mentioned that the in-production PBS documentary called The American Constitution still goes on. Several weeks ago, I showed you the clip that I was in. I played Amos Singletary, one of the Massachusetts delegations trying to decide whether or not to ratify the Constitution. I'd encourage you to visit the site from time to time, www.constitu.com, because the producers continually update it. They add new clips all the time. As I've said, it's an enormous project. It's going to air over 5 nights, so it's taking some time. But you might visit every now and again.
Hey, let me tell you about my book, Shrink. For most of my adult life, I weighed a little over 100 pounds, not much more than in this picture taken when I was about 17 and considering becoming a jockey. But as is often true, once I crossed into my 40s, extra weight came and it stayed. For years I tried to lose, instead gained, and ended up 153 pounds. And I'm embarrassed to show you this video. Then I learned that it isn't about calories and exercise, but instead it's about what you eat. You might say, sure, ice cream makes you fat. But there were surprises, things like orange juice not being such a wise choice if you're trying to lose weight. So I just made some basic changes to what I ate, not how much, and the weight just fell off. Now, nearly 3 years later, it is still off. And don't misunderstand, I'm eating foods I like, not bamboo shoots. Friends ask me how I did it so often, I put it in a book. It's available as an ebook for all platforms, and the print edition is available at barnesandnoble.com and amazon.com. Hey, you can shrink too.
Welcome back. You can write to us at the Bruce Channel at yahoo.com, and you can watch all of our previous shows at either tinyurl.com/Bruce Channel or at our Facebook page. All right, so speaking of books, back in June, when talking about D-Day, I'd mentioned the book and movie Eye of the Needle. Now, it had been a long time since I read it, so I read it again. I was struck by two things. One, Ken Follett's first book, starting like at the top, nothing like starting out at the top. And he was only 27 at the time. Starting out at the top is not always a good thing. Remember how Orson Welles, whose early success, Citizen Kane, everything else he did subsequent to that was always measured against that, and thus what always was said, he fell a little short, I've read most of Ken Follett's books. If you haven't, I'd encourage you to. Eye of the Needle is a great place to start. It's a little bit like Frederick Forsyth's Day of the Jackal in that it's based on real history, so the ultimate outcome is known, remains exciting anyway. And also, a little bit, one finds oneself rooting for the bad guy. And manifesting both of those facets, that's a hard thing to achieve. So, I'd recommend the book. But Ken Follett has written many other books, equally gripping stories. Sometimes contemporary, sometimes recently historical, which is how I frame the ones that are in the days of World War II. But I strongly urge you to read what may be his tour de force, or maybe, more accurately perhaps, tours de force. Actually, looking it up to tell you about it, I discovered I'm behind the times. Years ago, already a fan of his, I read a book that was absolutely nothing like anything else he'd ever done, called Pillars of the Earth. It was longer, and also nothing contemporaneous about it. It took place in the Middle Ages. Now, building a Gothic cathedral may not sound interesting, but it's a page turner. It really is. It's also an eye-opening social commentary. It was made into a multi-part television movie. I'd skip that. But the books, if you think building a Gothic cathedral, who cares? If you think like that, I'd offer this analogy. 3 years ago, I had heard of Downton Abbey. The BBC series was also shown on PBS. I'd heard of it, but could not imagine myself ever wanting to watch it. Imagine my shock as I discovered I not only enjoyed it, but that it was must-see TV. Pillars of the Earth, you won't be sorry. Pillars of the Earth has a sequel set 200 years later, and it's as gripping as the first. Highly recommend them. What I just learned, though, there's a third book to that series called Column of Fire. I didn't know it existed, but combined, they're known as the Nightbridge series. But what I am currently reading, I learned he has another series called the Century Trilogy. I'm reading the first one called Fall of Giants, and I am enjoying it. I suspect I'll read all three of these from the Century series before retracing my steps and catching up with A Column of Fire. All right, a few weeks back, I told you of a completely benign but enjoyable adventure film called National Treasure 2, stars Nicolas Cage. I'm sure one day soon I'll enjoy National Treasure 3. I'm not putting a heavy recommendation on it. I found it enjoyable, fun. Within the last 2 weeks, I have seen two films that I will recommend to you. One I knew of, and the other I only recently became aware of. First, The Founder, starring Michael Keaton. We all know that Michael Keaton can flat out act, So his terrific performance as McDonald's founder Ray Kroc shouldn't surprise. In fact, what is a surprise is that neither he nor the film got nominated for any awards. Like you, I knew a bit, vaguely in my case, Ray Kroc sold kitchen machines to restaurants and that he discovered a restaurant called McDonald's that was successful and that he steered it into what we know it is today. The story of how he did that, it's quite a story actually. I won't spoil it for you, but even if you saw it in the theater, you may want to rent the disc because there's a terrific special feature. It's a discussion, more of a Q&A actually. The producer, the director, various cast members, and even members of the McDonald family. Really good stuff. All right, the other film. The one I didn't even know existed, and I don't know why I didn't. It's an important film. It's directed by Oliver Stone. So if I have a criticism of it at all, it's merely that sometimes it may pay a little too much attention to detail. But it's called Snowden. And it is the dramatization, not surprisingly, the story of Edward Snowden, who of course let the world know that the United States government routinely spies on everybody. It's a pretty powerful film, and I recommend it. Besides the fact that it existed, which surprised me, it had a couple of other surprises. Clint Eastwood's son Scott is in it. And there's a point when the lighting is just right and the angle is just right, and suddenly you're looking at Clint Eastwood, or his son Scott, but wow, you can tell. I'd mentioned Nicolas Cage just a bit ago. He was in the movie, didn't expect that, and it was more than a cameo, but it was a rather small role. I do not know, did he learn this picture was being made and decided he wanted to be a part of it? Joseph Gordon-Levitt plays Snowden. He does a great job. And I didn't know much of Snowden's real story beyond what we read back when the news was breaking. He was, described as a contract worker for the CIA. According to the biography, at least as laid out in the film, that barely scratches the surface. First, Edward Snowden was originally a super patriot. He tried to become a Green Beret, Special Forces. He didn't graduate high school, but he's a genius. He knows lots and lots of things, about a lot of things. He's a true autodidact. And he tried to join the CIA. He takes a test. The average person takes 5 hours. If you take more than 8, you're out. He does it, well, I won't spoil. Way, 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 way less than that. All right, biggest surprise of all. In the film, there's a high-up CIA official, and he is Snowden's boss. Okay, no biggie. The actor did a good job. I didn't recognize him. Maybe a year ago I told you of an old film from the 90s, I think, but one I'd only recently seen. And once I saw it, I loved it, and it became an all-time favorite of mine, Notting Hill. If you haven't seen it, I'd recommend it. But in it, London bookseller Hugh Grant has a rather smarmy, that's putting it kindly, smarmy roommate. Grant is likable, clean-cut culture. The roommate is profane. He doesn't look very clean. Well, he looks like this. That roommate is played by Welsh actor Rhys Ifans. That's a Welsh spelling. He was born Evans, but he's Welsh, so they changed it to Rhys Ifans. And yeah, that's who played Snowden's boss. I never would have recognized him. The thing is, neither did I recognize him when he played Xenophilius Lovegood. All right. For the week upcoming, Monday, the 10th, offers a real smorgasbord, a variety pack. First of all, it's Don't Step on a Bee Day. That's always a good idea, especially when we need bees more than ever, and yet they're endangered more than ever. And have you heard the news? It's also Town Crier Day. And yet another day to try and become more spiritual. Monday is also Pina Colada Day. And
if you go down in the woods today, you're sure of a big surprise. If you go down in the woods today, you'd better go in disguise. For every bear that ever there was will gather there for certain, because today's the day the teddy bears have their picnic. Beneath the trees where no nobody sees, they'll hide and seek as long as they please. That's the way the teddy bears have their picnic.
Yes, really, it's Teddy Bear's Picnic Day. Really. Yes. All right, Wednesday, the 12th. I'm not sure I knew this was a thing, so I could not have known it was a day, but Wednesday is Different Colored Eyes Days. Girl with kaleidoscope eyes. Is that what that is? Anyway. Finally, just in time for the weekend, another opportunity to live a more spiritual life. Friday, Grand Marnier Day. And whether your eyes are the same color or not, and whether or not you achieve greater spirituality at any point in the week, my wish for you is that your upcoming week is the best one you've ever had.